they hypothesized that perfect flowers was an advancement in how they have both pollen and the eggs in one site. That way, when a pollinator comes, they can pick up pollen and drop off pollen to that egg. They think that having a perfect flower was a strong advancement for the angiosperms in terms of their strategy to complete their life cycle. Imperfect, on the other hand, means that they're just male flowers or female flowers. And so then this term monoecious or dioecious comes into play. When you look at the entire plant, you say, well, it's monoecious if there's male and female flowers on the same plant. So I found when I was learning this idea, the best example I latched onto was corn. I was most familiar with corn. So yeah, so you definitely for you, monoecious, they have the corn on the cob flower. That's going to become the sweet corn on the cob. That's the female flowers actually. And then the male flowers on the top that you have to detassel. So that was an easy way for me to remember this idea. And then dioecious is the idea that you have a separate male plant with male flowers, and then another individual of the same species is just the female. Yes.
So I have a question. I do have two corn plants successfully grown from like this class. However, when they like grow, do I need to detassel them in order for them to eat it, or are they just gonna do their thing naturally and I just leave them alone and then I should get it?
I think so. The corn cultivar that I bought didn't say anything like this should be detasseled. I'm pretty sure.
Just let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, let's see what happens. So I'm glad you got it to go. I've had some issues with corn in the past, believe it or not, where the seeds get overrun with fungi and they just, yeah.
It took me like we germinated 8 seeds and only 2 of them came up.
Yeah, so good on you. Corn is not, you'd think it'd be easy, right? Because we grow so much corn here in the United States, but I've had issues with it. So okay, so perfect versus imperfect. And then we talked about this idea that some flowers will do their timing of when the pollen matures, when the egg matures, so that if they're a perfect flower, for example, they can do a different timing on that so that they don't self-pollinate. In general, it's a good idea to get mixing up of genes from different individuals of that same species to just increase the vigor. Yes.
Question about corn again, but how did you get the different color kernels? Are those like different individual like genotypes of the flowers that you express?
Yeah, does anyone know any more about that? I mean, that's correct, but I don't know much beyond that. I know that you can get corn on the cob with beautiful, rainbow essentially of colors. And there's all kinds of different cultivars out there. I don't know yeah, I don't know how they breed for that, what's going on there. I'm sure there's a lot of selective breeding.
Individually expressed by the
different current, yep. Yep. So, okay. So now if we're thinking about, let's say this plant's like, I want pollen from another plant. I want to attract a pollinator to bring me pollen from a different source. I don't want to get it from my own flowers. So then you need to think about being an advertiser, like a marketing campaign. So if you're trying to attract the attention of a typical pollinator, what do you think you would do? Would you be modest in how many flowers you have, or would you be pretty flamboyant? Yeah, flamboyant, right? Think about grabbing the attention. If you're trying to sell something to someone, you really want to grab their attention, right? So usually many flowers or bracts, we talked about leaves that can be very brightly colored. That's a great strategy because leaves last longer than flower petals. So that's another great strategy to have some bracts around the flower. So that's a great idea. So would you kind of be a wallflower and kind of hide your flowers close to the leaves, or would you kind of present it? right? Present it like, hey, here I am, look at this beautiful thing, come see. And so usually the types of flowers that really depend on a pollinator, they'll have a longer stalk length to the flower. Is that the peduncle? That fun word, peduncle? So scent. Okay, now this can vary, right? If you know anything about different animals, not all animals have a good sense of smell, right? At least that's what we think. And then of course, some animals don't like the smells we like. So we have to think about that as we work through this. Okay, so we'll talk about scent. Number of pollen grains. So now think about, again, this is going to depend a little bit on the pollinator. But if you compare it to wind, probably wind trumps in terms of pollen grain number. Wind is so imprecise, they probably really overload how much pollen they make every year.
That's why everything.
Yeah, if you park your car or something under a tree that's, with catkins, you come back and it's just covered. So, number of pollen grains, like winds, you get more pollen grains through that type of mechanism of pollination, but with the different organisms, some are more than others. It depends. So we'll look at that a little bit. It depends if the pollinator also eats some of the pollen grains. So we have to think about that. We also have to think about the idea that not all animals see the world how we see it. Our vision is, we have a very particular type of vision. So we see what's on the left when we look at this flower. A bee that can perceive ultraviolet light would see more like what's on the right. That's what we hypothesize. So it's a huge difference. Often what they tend to see when they've done these studies and they're looking at it like, how would a bee see this flower? Very often what you see is that the center of the flower is usually a really almost like a target, like when you play darts, and you have that target in the middle that you're trying to get. And then you usually have some kind of pattern where it's kind of like just directing your eye. I mean, don't those stripes just kind of focus your eye right to the center? So it's great marketing and advertising. And so if it's not so noticeable here. It's just like we tend to see, oh, look at that beautiful entire flower. Whereas a bee would be like, yes, I'm going to the center. And that's usually where the reward is. And so it's really interesting to see some of these comparisons. So again, we would see the flower as it's being shown on the right. A bee would see something like on the left. And again, you can see that contrast that really kind of gets them to go to the center. So again, we see this beautiful entire yellow flower on the right. The bee would see this contrasting design that really gets them to look toward the center. So amazing adaptations by these plants to be able to really, direct their design to their particular pollinator.
They like native plants too.
Yeah, and it has to do with flower design for sure. We'll get into that a little bit more on this. So ultraviolet light, don't forget that just because we live our lives a certain way, that doesn't mean that all organisms see the world as we do. So again, we see what it would be on the top left there. And then look at that contrast. We have such a dark center, just kind of reading your eye right there. And again, look at the difference. It's just phenomenal. It's really fun to think about as you're out hiking. Try keeping this in mind when you're out hiking this summer, because it's just, I wish we had an easy way to like, what does this look like to a bee,
I think there might be like filters on your new.
On the phones, you could even do?
UV.
Oh,
So you can.
that would be cool.
technically bug vision.
Yeah,
Like,
that would be
like
cool.
stuff.
There's an app for that? Is that
Yeah,
what
I
you're
guess
saying?
so.
There's an app for that. Yeah, I hope there is. If someone
I-
finds something, let me know, because I don't have I don't have a fancy phone, but my phone should be able to handle it.
If I
So-
find something, I'll send it. your
Yeah,
way.
I can then show it to the whole class. So again, what we see is on the left and then ultraviolet on the right. Just really, really different. So bees do see that ultraviolet. They have that ability. Super important. They don't seem to hone in directly on red. They can see the pattern well, like that last one was red and white. They see that contrast, but they think that at least the way we perceive red, they don't perceive red, I guess is the way to put it. They do seem to be more attracted to blue or yellow, what we call blue or yellow, what our eyes see as blue or yellow. Remember, to them, it might show up with a different pattern or different colors. You tend to see a fairly nice landing platform for their heavy-ish body. You know, they're plump. It's amazing those things can fly. It's always fun to watch them in the spring, especially. By the way, keep your dandelions going. You know about No Mow May, right? Another plug for dandelions in this class before you leave. Okay. So dandelions are incredibly important coming up next month. And then it's just so fun to watch the bees fly from dandelion to dandelion.
I
Yes.
know,
Yes.
They're hilarious.
Bumper cars almost, you know? What were you gonna say?
I forgot.
Yeah, okay.
Not important.
Well, if you think about it. So, you know, they have to have somewhere on the flower has to be sturdy enough for them to land and move around. They're, of course, as they move, their body is getting covered with pollen. So you some pictures. So honeybees, of course, for the human, our way of eating, they're incredibly important for our food crops. And that's why so many people are so concerned about colony collapse disorder. A third of human nutrition is due to bee pollination. And I can't remember if I talked to you all yet about how they, they literally truck bees around to different agricultural fields. I mean, that's like a whole person's job, their livelihood. They'll truck bees around and then they open up the bee hives that the artificial beehives, and they go off and pollinate. And then they come back and then they load them back up on the truck and they go to the next. I mean, that's just a thing. Yeah.
Stay at our farm for 2 months.
So he's kind of keying into their natural rhythm. I wonder if they all do that. I don't know if they all do that. Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah, so it's, I didn't realize that until, as an adult, that they do this kind of thing. And so you can imagine people who do this for a living, if their colonies collapse and huge die-offs, not only is it bad for that, but it's certainly bad for all of us. So this is something that we need to really be aware of and concerned about. That's why I think one of the reasons why the city of Marquette gave the okay for you to raise bees in the city, partly because of this issue. There was, I believe I know who pushed for it. It's I believe Sarah Middlefeld, Dr. Middlefeld up in the Eags department got the ear of somebody and they finally allowed for that.
We'll say raising like your traditional honeybee up here, the Italian bees, it's really difficult with the cold.
I can imagine,
Lose a lot of your colony in the winter.
just because the winter's so long
Yeah,
and
you'll
harsh.
lose it entirely.
Yeah.
Like there's a more aggressive Russian bee that you can use in the colder climates. So
Okay.
that might be.
I
what you
wonder-
wanna use if you're.
Do you think
up
anyone's
here.
gonna come up with, this is a better way to house your bees in the winter in northern climates?
I mean, yeah, you can like really pack it down and stuff.
Yeah. I think there should be some way.
Don't forget that native bees eat our food.
Yeah,
Native wildflowers.
Yeah.
Your garden.
absolutely. And now,
They take care of everything with our like livestock. Stuff.
yeah, exactly. So the natives, and that's why, No Mow May, trying to keep up with giving the natives.
House the bees and like them have like over the winter, wouldn't they have to have enough food to like last them through the winter?
Yeah.
Can you artificially feed the bees? Or, like,
No, they store it.
Most bees make way more money than they actually do.
Yeah, they kind of stock up for winter, essentially. So I know Dr. Chinelli up in the chemistry department is the advisor for the beekeeping club here on campus. We have a beekeeping club. And I think they had beehives set up, I think down by the Jacob Betty building, down by Sugarloaf Avenue there, across from where the like police station there. I think that's where they put it. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you should contact her and she probably can get you in touch with the club and get involved in that. So it's definitely, I've considered raising bees. I just need to think about whether or not I can devote enough attention to it.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
I've done it. It's rewarding. It's really fun, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of lifting and
Yeah.
sorting through bee
That's why I
files to
think a
find
club,
queen
like
and
the club
stuff, but
idea would be great. Like if we
Yeah.
could learn as a group
If you have
and
multiple people working on
Right.
it, it's so much easier.
then you can kind of spread out the load of work,
Right,
you know?
right.
So,
How much of a problem is this here, like bears?
uh,
You lose your whole thing.
Oh,
That's what happened to us.
Possum, skunks, bears,
That's
yeah.
probably a slightly larger issue here.
yeah. I don't know. Well, there was video of a bear walking down Washington Street last year. Did you all see that? That was stunning. That's the first time I have ever seen that. Not that they probably, maybe at night they stroll down Washington. Window shop, I don't know, but.
Yes, put electric fences around, and one of the bears still went through it.
Oh. They were motivated.
Reset.
Well, very recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, bears need to eat, that's for sure, but you have to give that some thought.
Such a one of my coworkers, he was like building a pump on his property and he like ate it once when he was doing that. And because there was the smell of a ham sandwich on there, bear came and destroyed it, so.
Wow. Okay,
They don't mess around.
yeah, it's kind of, so who knows when bears are becoming active? Are they already becoming
They
active
start to become-
right now?
Not hibernation, pretty
It's
right now.
in April-ish? Okay, so be careful, if you're out hiking. Okay, bees would be attracted to this purpley blue and the yellow, that would attract them. Yeah, so we'll look at flower design a little bit here. This is a really good, I think this one's actually called, oh, they call it beard's tongue. But I mean, to me, that just looks perfect for a bee.
I would
You know?
love to sit in there, cause
To land in there and go in there. I mean, that just looks so inviting for a bee. So again, this kind of advertising. And I just thought this was a very cool picture. So they really get into the pollen apparently. So I'm sure, or I sure hope by now you've heard about colony collapse disorder somewhat, and this idea that there's a lot of concern about it. And, at first they were trying to zoom in on one culprit. Now I think the thinking is it's more than one issue that's kind of creating a perfect storm of situations. So, you have the parasite, the Varroa destructor, what a name, huh? Varroa destructor. The parasite, you can see the poor thing, the poor bee has the parasite on it. This is what it looks like. And you can see it up close here on the bee, and so it feeds off the bee. So it spreads globally, so really nowhere.
Australia.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Check them out.
I should look for an updated map and see if they've
Oh.
managed. This is from
Yeah,
a
they're probably.
couple of years ago now. So here's some data too of Nosema as a fungus, a fungal pathogen. And they were looking at presence or absence of the spores of this fungus. And you can see this nice trend. It's not nice, but you can see the data as it's going up and up and up. They've also been able to isolate bacteria from hives that are causing problems, pathogenic bacteria. And then add on top of all of that, poor nutrition. Now, what I mean by this is that if you have um, monocultures where the bees are eating too much of one food source, just like you, if you ate hamburgers every day for weeks, your immune system probably would be weakened. You would be more susceptible because you're not getting that good, healthy nutrition, you're not eating the rainbow, you need to have that diversity. And they think it's the same with any organism, including bees. You have to have the right nutrition in order to support your immune system and to be able to fight off pathogens. So they definitely think that's an issue. And then pesticides. So it's like this perfect storm of conditions.
One of my grandparents just. He's had a lot of problems with them just kind of like snoring and sleeping,
Yes.
like they not like dying off just.
Yeah, they just like vacate their home.
Yeah, do you think that might be?
Got a little light on that. A lot of times if the colonies are like really successful, really bustling, they'll form like a new queen, like a usurper queen, and that queen will take a lot of the worker bees with her. So you really have to identify, looking for that other queen. Does that actually happen to me? I was able to find both queens and separate them, but had to climb up in a tree to like get my swarm back. It was crazy. I'll send you some pictures. I was high up there.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's any other reason, like,
Livestock and have that right being.
Seriously.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know, that,
Like generally
that
like.
does seem like a good thought, that could be it.
Yeah, she stopped doing beekeeping a few years ago because it just happened to her so frequently. She's like, I can't experience this
they
loss
don't like me.
anymore."
They're good at it. They just.
Yeah, tell her she's just really good.
Yeah,
Make her feel better.
too bustling.
Yeah. So, there's a class of pesticides called neonicotinoids. And so these are pretty potent pesticides. So they're really starting to say, it's probably not helping our bees' health to have them exposed, because they're feeding off of plants that were sprayed with neonicotinoids. So they're getting exposed to it. Right, so this is, so as you can see, they, when they started this whole investigation, they wanted to kind of pin it on one thing, and then they realized, you can't really do that. But
Because it's really bad for all the animals. Water too.
Mhm.
Maybe you shouldn't use it.
exactly. Yep, stewardship. I love that word. They require stewardship, so we need to be thoughtful about it. Here's Paul Stamets. That was a publicity stunt, quite eye-catching. This is a video. So Paul Stamets is the fungus guru. He is of the opinion that fungi can save the world and of all the so much of the human issues we've created. He owns his own fungal company out west called Fungi Perfecti. And he sells all kinds of fungi that's for you to grow your own and edible, medicinal. He's written books. He's kind of considered, the guru when it comes to fungi. And he lives out in Washington State. So he donated money toward the bee research because he's very, yeah, he's got really good observational skills and just he can really think forward, like, how could we use this? And so even though he's a fungal expert, he is helping develop a food as kind of like a hummingbird feeder but with food in there for bees, to support bees, to improve their nutrition. Because he had personal experience where when his grandma, I think, was diagnosed with cancer. And so he started her on a nutritional regimen, and fungi, certain medicinal fungi were part of that. And she went into remission with all of that. And so, you know, he's really become a proponent of, if you give good preventative medicine, good nutrition, that can go a long way to helping the bees as well. And so they're covered in bees there. I don't know if I would have done that. So it's this give bees a chance effort. So it talks a little bit about this. So up to, you know, 200,000, he's been pushing into this research. And so when I was this YouTube link, I think, can get you some more information on it, but he's looking at liquid extracts from some of the fungi that he works with. And the idea there is to provide a really potent nutrition source for the bees so that they can be kind of shored up in their nutrition. Yes.
Viral sickness is caused by a fungus. Like earlier in the lecture, was that caused by a fungus?
With the virus, there, as far as I know, viruses, like this is a mite.
It's might.
Yeah. So I don't know what kind of viruses attack bees. Does anyone know if viruses have been playing a role?
They probably saw them every.
I'm sure viruses are playing a role because they're everywhere. I mean,
There's
I,
not a single living thing on this planet that doesn't have a virus.
Uh-huh. yeah, absolutely. So that's what they're looking at. It kind of looks like a hummingbird feeder. And they've been doing some studies where, you know, they're trying to figure out the design, the color, the right combination of the liquids, but he's looking at mushroom mycelium extract. And so I think he's onto something. I'm hoping, I keep doing, you know, looking for it to see if it's going to get commercialized yet, but I haven't seen it out on the shelves yet. But if anyone does see it, let me know. I think that's a great idea. So honeybees are incredibly important, but they're not the only pollinator. Beetles. So if you think about what they might like to come visit, probably not the sense we care for too much. I'm guessing they often refer to it as yeasty smelling or spicy smelling, pretty strong. Yeah, it depends on the spiciness, I guess. And they hypothesize that they don't have great vision, so the flowers typically aren't super flashy, but more rely on scent and location. Like I've seen some plants put their flowers a little lower down toward the ground where the beetles have an easier time moving from flower to flower. If you think about butterflies and then the moths that come out during the day, they think that they're pretty similar to bee flowers, but they hypothesize that they can be attracted to red, what we perceive as red. They seem to like that. I remember when I was in elementary school, I had a bright yellow poncho. I had bees chasing me during recess. I was freaked out. And then the the teachers who stand out there and they're like, take your poncho off. And that, she knew that the yellow color.
Bugs, can typically only stand like red wavelengths, like they can't see higher than blue.
Okay. Yeah, that
Because
makes
I know,
sense to me.
like hummingbirds, like that's why they used to dye it red with nectar, so
Oh.
you can see it better, but obviously that's not good for them, don't do that. But, like, you can still have like red.
Yeah, like the parts of the feeder can be bright red, yeah. So you tend to see, and like the day active moths too, I guess they can see similar colors to what bees do. And now you have to start thinking, like like when we looked at the bees, we said there's usually some kind of landing platform that's a little bit sturdy for the heavy bee body. With moths or butterflies, they tend to have a longer mouth part. Their proboscis can be longer. And so the flower can tuck their nectar a little deeper into the flower so that it's just for that moth and not just for anyone to come along. So if you're trying to attract a moth, you don't want to make it so easy for other organisms to get access to the nectar. You want to design it for this moth or this butterfly can get my nectar, but no one else can. And so if you think about their long mouth parts, that would be a good idea. Tuck the nectar a little deeper so only their mouth part can reach it. And so, when you're out hiking around and looking at these different flowers, that's something to consider as well.
There's, I can't remember where it lives, but it has like a nectar tube that's nearly 14 inches long. And this, before they ever found the moth, they were like, there must be a butterfly or moth or something.
That has it
out
really
there."
long.
And they sure enough, later they found it.
I think I've seen video of that. And the proboscis is so long that like with the slightest wind,
Yeah.
it's like, whoo. So yeah, that was stunning video of that. So
I think it's like that because like a lot of butterflies, they're like, I'm in a hurry, trying to get a bunch of flowers, so I'm just gonna stick my nose and real quick with leave. and
Yeah.
get pollen.
yeah,
So the flower's like, no, I need you to do that. So they put the nectar even deeper.
yeah, force them to really work for it.
Which part is possible? It's the flower.
The mouth part of the insect. I think I have, do I have one of those?
It's their phone.
It's right there. I don't know if you can see that from where you're sitting.
When they're not using it, it's curled up in like a swarm.
Yeah, they can curl it, but I think they're really long
It
one.
is.
Yeah,
There's one though, I don't know that they can curl it.
some of the smaller ones, they don't.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Yeah, if you look up some videography on YouTube, it's really cool. So here you can see how, they really designed it. So they would put the nectar, down in the base. So that is a really good design. You can imagine something with a long proboscis. And then as they're like, hey, I gotta get that nectar, they're brushing against all the pollen. And so it's a really good strategy.
Off-putting something, so that like be like.
Yeah, because they have that kind of flower, right?
Blossom, and then on the string is like the sugar stuff that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So this kind of segues into the idea of nocturnal pollination, because this one was light colored. So if it's completely black, darkness, and you're a plant, you're like, oh, I need to attract a pollinator that flies around at night or crawls around at night. White flowers do make a lot of sense, right? So, just try to get that contrast between the pitch black night. And so and you can see people landscape with, flowers that open up at night or are bright white like that. And so just look for that as you're hiking around or walking around. But, you have a lot of night active moths and beetles and flies, bats that will be visually attracted to that. They'll be able to pick up on the white. So if you're a plant that needs to attract attention at night, white flowers, what do you think about scent? Yeah, you'd want to pump that scent out. And so you really have kind of limited options. So white flowers, something that contrasts really nice with the darkness, and then really get some scent out there so that they can better hone in on where the flowers are located. So a lot of desert plants, you tend to see, this is some kind of cactus, it looks like. And the odor is really getting pumped out at night, and then during the day, they just shut that off. They stop producing it.
Are there flowers that are gray in color to us? But like in.
I can't,
Flowers look black. There's probably a gray bear in itself.
Somewhere. I just can't think of anything. You know what color is hard though? They're blue. Like it's very rare to find blue, true blue flowers. It's not very common.
True blue is totally all blue.
Yeah.
that we-
Yeah,
Well, it's like actually blue pigment and not just structure.
Oh.
right.
Like how blue jay feathers only get blue because they're reflecting. light.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're not actually.
Right.
Right, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's,
Hard for living things to make blue pigment.
yeah, I don't know. I have yet to find if they know why exactly, but they just say that's a really hard, we just don't see it very much, so. So again, you know, that bright white, well, for the most part, you see a little bit of purpley color there, but. Okay, here's my plug for bats, like dandelions, okay? Bats are really, really important pollinators. Yeah, I mean, they get such a bad rap. I get, well, when those movies came out about the evil bats and, you know, the Hollywood movies, I was just so angry. So, bats do not deserve that level of hatred and fear. They are important. I have down in the notes here, they pollinate banana, mangoes, sisal, kapok. I mean, those are all really important in the agricultural industry. And so they are really important pollinators. So don't try to educate people that are non-botany or science people. We need our bats. They should not be exterminated. And of course, birds. So beautiful hummingbird here. Very, very important hummingbirds and honey creepers, really important pollinators in so many portions of the world. And because of their beak length, you again see some interesting flower designs to get that coevolutionary strategy of attracting them. Most birds like red and yellow. I've been out hiking and, you know, worn red or yellow, and hummingbirds will come right up to me and hover like, are you a big flower? You know, I mean, they literally come like right to me, and then they,
Sorry to disappoint.
yeah, they hover there for a few seconds and they're like, "Ah," and then they take.
I'm always wondering what it like, cause
Yeah,
that last summer just sitting on my deck.
especially in the
come up.
spring, like if you hang
Yeah.
hummingbirds in an area where there's not a lot of hummingbird feeders, I mean, if you hang a lot of
Yeah,
those,
that's probably.
and then, you know, so if they'll come to that area, like I've been in woods where there, you know, someone has a camp and they have hummingbird feeders, I'm just a little ways away in the woods with a bright color, you know, red or yellow, and they'll come right up to me, because they're, you know, they go around to all the feeders in the spring, right? They're desperate to get all their food. So, yeah, some really interesting coevolution with the beak shape of the hummingbird or the honey creeper to the flower. It matches really well to where they tuck away the nectar. And if you're quiet, I remember I bought a hummingbird feeder from my mom and dad for Mother's Day or something, and my dad's like, that'll never work. We don't have hummingbirds around here. And filled it up with no yellow red dye, and within a half hour it was getting covered, you know, a bunch of hummingbirds. So he had to change his mind on that one. So even here in Marquette, there's hummingbirds. So look at that beak shape. That's amazing. So again, this flower designs the nectar to go down low and tucked away. So you tend to see that kind of trumpet shape again, and it can be fairly long. This is another good shot at that. So again, this idea of, you know, thinking about trying to put on a good advertising campaign for the very particular thing you're interested in attracting. So bird of paradise, nice and sturdy for this heavier bird. By the way, with the, I forgot to mention, these types of flowers that bats attend to are usually fairly sturdy too, because often they'll land for a little bit, and then fly off. And so, bat pollinated plants tend to have a really sturdy peduncle, and so does the bird of
Love that.
paradise. So I have yet to see one in real life with my own eyes.
They're
Oh,
cool.
I bet. Hawaii must have
I
a
was
ton of
about to
them.
say all the more reason for you to
Yeah.
take that Hawaii trip.
Yeah, my friend and her husband just bought like a condo out there. I was like,
Oh.
ooh.
Like Kim,
Yeah.
Dr. Kim,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, Kim Palazzo.
Finally moved out there.
They're gonna rent it out and then eventually retire there.
That's
So,
awesome.
but
Good to
she's
hear.
got a lot of connections in Hawaii with plants and flowers, so. Yeah. So this is a Protea species and this is an inflorescence. So this is pretty massive. And then the red are actually modified leaves. So this is in Southern Africa. We don't have anything like this around here. But birds tend to come to this. The red is red and yellow. So that's kind of a giveaway that it's probably birds rather than flies or something like that. So, and besides bats, there are other mammals. Very often, if it's a mouse, I've seen especially in desert plants that are pollinated by desert mice, they tend to put their flowers low so that as the mice are scurrying around on the desert floor, they can easily get access to the flowers. So don't forget about those types of mammals. It's not just the bats, but as far as food that we eat, bananas and mangoes are very, very important for bat pollination. And so, it depends, a nocturnal again, a lot of rodents are nocturnal. So you tend to see whitish flowers, strong scents for both. If you think about some of the mice in the desert, for example. So here's the carrion flower. We have one of these, one that looks just like this in greenhouse. Not flowering currently, but they call it carrion flower. So what do you think? What kind of smell?
Body.
Rotting flesh. That's pretty accurate. Rotting flesh. And it is strong, but at least the whole greenhouse doesn't stink. You have to get up to it. When you're about a foot away, then you're like, oh yeah, now I can smell it. So,
I'm sure the flies can smell that.
yes, flies love to pollinate. And then I know there's one species of carrion flowers. Is it in that video that you'll be watching? Where it's on like a seagull colony along a cliff and they have these flowers and it looks like a dead seagull. Like the actual flower parts look like the breast of a seagull. And then it smells like it's dead. It's really
Figure that
uncanny
out.
how close it looks like a dead seagull just laying there. And I think that's gonna be in that video that you'll watch for
So
lab.
more like southern lands, do you think like reptiles are like pollinators too, like the lizards or like the frogs?
Chameleons and lizards, yeah, I would think so.
There's only one frog that's been known to pollinate flowers. We're not super sure on it, but it's really cool.
In this area
No,
or
it's,
somewhere?
It's in South
Tropical?
America.
Okay,
It's one little frog and they have a sweet tooth, they like to eat fruit and they also
Oh.
crawl into flowers.
yeah,
And so
Huh.
they get covered in pollen.
yeah, yeah,
So it's like, I don't even, it's not really sure if they're intended to. That's how the
Right.
Flowers,
right.
they do it, so.
Be interesting to track that, over time to see, like, if they could somehow get data from fossil records or something to see if it's changed. So carrion flowers is something you probably don't want in your home. The corpse flower is massive. So there's universities who have these flowers and then they have cameras that they stream on the internet. And you can watch it grow, develop, and then it'll finally bloom. And I think it's a pretty short bloom time.
It's like 2 days.
Yeah, which is such a shame. I mean, it takes forever for this thing, months and months for this thing to get to the mature stage and then it only opens. That's why they started putting cameras on it so everyone can enjoy it. If you can't get there in person, at least you can see it.
It stinks.
Yes, it does. There's one, my friend who lives downstate, she sent me one.
U of M.
Is it U of M?
U of M's got it. Botanical Gardens.
Yeah.
That's where I saw it.
Yeah, I think that's where she was, and she sent me a pic.
Uh, They just have a huge pot.
So then you get into the orchids and some of the interesting strategies developed through the just the co-evolutionary process between the orchid plants and their pollinators. And so I wanted to go through some of their interesting dynamics, but we're running out of time to really get into that. So let's start on that on Monday, and we'll get into some of the crafty ways orchids get the job done